Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to hear from and learn about the Women of Ivey. This is a all-star lineup of very recent alum who I'm excited for you to hear from as they share their experience, the impact of the program, and answer any questions that you might have about the Ivey Executive MBA. I think before we do introductions, I'll provide just a very high-level kind of Pulls Notes version of the program so that as our panelists are sharing some of their experiences, hopefully that overview will help kind of paint the full picture. So the Ivey Executive MBA is a 15-month while you work program designed for mid to senior level professionals. So what you'll find in an average class is that there's between 55 and 60 people in each cohort. We have 2 start dates per year in both February and September. And the bare minimum work experience that individuals bring to the program is 8 years of professional leadership management experience. But the average within a given class is pretty consistently around 15 or 16 years of experience. And one of the things that Ivey really prides itself on is that those 55 to 60 individuals in each class come from incredibly broad and diverse industries. And I think what you'll find is that that's reflected in each cohort, but also in our panel today. So you'll hear from 5 remarkable women who do have very different professional experiences in different industries, which really lends itself to an enriching learning experience. We're a case-based school. We're the only case-based program in Canada and one of only 4 in the world. And what that means is that you're constantly put in the driver's seat to drive decision and to drive impact and ask, what would you do if you were in that decision-making role? And so over the course of the 15 months, I know our panelists here were put in that hot seat 220 times, actually, if you do an actual count of the number of cases. And really the outcome you'll hear from our panelists, but it really helps broaden out your knowledge across all areas of business and really helps define your leadership skills. So that's a little bit of an overview about the Executive MBA. And without further ado, what I'd like to do is maybe hand it over to each of our wonderful panelists to start with an introduction, maybe telling us a bit about when you graduated from the program, and also what you do for work. What industry are you in? So maybe Jag, can we start with you?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Jagrup Gill. Everyone calls me Jag. I graduated from EMBA in 2021. I was the COVID class, so we finished last year in July. And I'm currently a regional leader for customer success at an AI software company called Data IQ. Thank you.
Karen, why don't we hand it over to you?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. So Karen Menjivar, I graduated from the Executive MBA in January 2021. So I was the class ahead of Jag. I'm currently a Director of Role Strategy at RBC and specialize in commercial banking. So hello, everyone.
And Susie, we'll pass the baton. I don't know if our screens are all showing the grid at the same makeup, but Susie, I'll pass it over to you. And then we'll go Anna and Stashin.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here today. I graduated EMBA 2021 in Jag's class. So I guess we graduated July last year. And I am a business development executive at Calian Nuclear. I've been in the nuclear industry for 13 years. I'm also the chair of the Women in Leadership Foundation, Ottawa.
Perfect. I'm Anna Gonzalez. I graduated in January 2021 with Karen and Station. I am the Senior Vice President of Talent and Workforce Transformation at CIBC.
So my name is Station Frederick. I am the proud Executive Director of a charity in Toronto. I am also the founder of an international organization called Braids for AIDS, which raises awareness around HIV/AIDS in the Black community. And if I didn't think I had enough time, I'm also a professor and a consultant for a number of not-for-profits, and now starting a number of small for-profit organizations.
Needless to say, you keep busy, and it sounds like, given the roles and just making a few assumptions about the demands of everyone's roles, you're all quite busy. and work keeps your plate quite full. In addition, of course, to your personal lives. I'm curious, recognizing the important work that each of you do across your diverse industries, I'm hoping you could tell me a little bit about how you decided it was the right time in your career to do an executive MBA. And on top of that, I'm hoping you can maybe touch on why Ivey. There's some great options, not only within Canada, but just south of the border. Hoping you can tell me why an executive MBA at this juncture in your career, and also why the Ivey Business School. And Stash, not to put you back on the hot seat, but maybe we can do a reverse order and I'll have you kick things off.
Sure. I think for me, I've always wanted to do an MBA, and that stirring within me probably started in 2016. This is when I became the executive director of Western Frontline Center, which again is a youth charity that supports youth in a marginalized community in Toronto. And so that there was that underpinning, and being a single Black woman, of course that piece around the financial aspect of an MBA was always something that I had to consider. But in 2019, I just realized that there was never going to be the right time to do an executive MBA or an MBA. But why I even chose an executive MBA, it was looking at who was going to be in the class that I was going to be a part of, and looking at individuals. So, Anna was in my class, Karen was in my class, and I'm so fortunate that I had the opportunity to meet other people, other women like them. So looking at who was going to be in my class was a big factor for me. These would be the next leaders of different organizations, current leaders of organizations. And when I look at in the not-for-profit sector, and we're looking at making relationships for funding opportunities, for networking opportunities, I wanted to be around and network with individuals like that. Why Ivey? Quite frankly, Ivey, again, talking, you mentioned about the case-based sort of way of learning. And so being exposed to that. So Harvard has that type of learning. And again, being quite honest, I have I'm part of a very competitive family, and my one of my brothers did an MBA at Wharton Business School, which was one of the Ivey business schools, and he said, the only way to compete with him is if I went to Ivey. And so just in terms of me sort of finding my place around the dinner table. And we talk about dinner table in the word of diversity and social inclusion, right? About women being at the table, but literally it was being at my family table and being able to hold some conversations that I needed to embark on this MBA.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're holding your own at that table, Stash. With that, Anna, I'm hoping you can touch on why an executive MBA and why Ivey.
For sure. I mean, I think you'll hear similarly from all of us. It was something that we always wanted to do. For me, my personal story, after I finished my undergrad, kind of life took over for various kind of personal reasons, and work and my career was really good to me. I had a family, and there was a bit of that time where you kind of just stop and you pause and you kind of say, really, is there ever a good time to do that? Before family, when the kids are young and the kids are still young, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's at a point where you just got to call it. And for me, it was important for me, although in my, my story is a bit different, a bit later in my career than some other folks. For me, it was a pretty kind of empowering kind of decision, because I have been internally focused in my own organization. And so, pursuing the MBA at this point in my career did help get more externally oriented and really round me out as a leader, right? And kind of push me into a different kind of realm of effectiveness. So that's a bit about kind of why the MBA. I think, why Ivey. First and foremost, it's a very strong reputation. I mean, in doing the line of work that I do, I have had the luxury of spending time with various leaders who have come through the Ivey program. I have sent other leaders, through their own kind of personal development journey to Ivey for that. So, it was the obvious choice for me. I think, the case-based piece was a large part of that. And being able to, again, have had, the experience that I've had in the workforce, nobody more than me could say to you that the most learning and stretches you'll get is being in a room filled with other people, working through different perspectives. And so for me, that was important. I didn't want to be in a room and spend 15 months being lectured. I wanted to be in a room immersed with others, hearing their different viewpoints, bringing that cross-industry experience that I didn't have because I chose to anchor my career in one organization and one industry. And so those were very much the two primary forces and advantages that I saw in Ivey in making my decision.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Susie, what about you? What drew you to the program and to the Executive MBA in general?
Thanks, Kim. So working in the nuclear energy industry, I had felt, particularly as a visible minority woman, that I didn't have too many options for where my career could go without leaving the industry. And so I saw an MBA as being aligned with where I wanted my career to go, and the MBA, the pursuit of an MBA, would help me strengthen my voice, earn credibility in this industry. And that is when I knew I wanted to go back. And as I explored different programs, I recall just looking for the best schools. And Ivey was at the top of my list, along with Rotman's, along with Queen's. And so when I applied, I accepted my offer. I was pregnant and I was scheduled to give birth. So my decision about where I wanted to go was actually tethered to when the start date was. So it was quite pragmatic for which school I selected. And so with Ivey and the multiple intakes a year, it just really aligned with what worked for me and my family. And the reason why Ivey made the top of my list was A, the case-based learning, but B, that international trips. Those international trips was something that really, really piqued my interest and my passions, looking at emerging markets, going with our cohorts, and that kind of team building and bonding and experience was something that really drew me to the program.
Thanks, Susie, and thanks for choosing Ivey. Karen, before I pass the baton to you, I want to quickly touch on two things that you mentioned. I think the schedule is a really critical piece, and it's a real attraction to the Ivey program, not only because there's 2 start dates per year, but because we meet in person once per month. So it's a long weekend once a month, Thursday through Sunday in class in downtown Toronto, in the financial district. And I think that recognizing how busy your careers are, how busy your personal lives are, making that once a month commitment to be downtown Toronto, regardless of whether you're based in the GTA or coming from across Canada, or even in some instances out of country, it's certainly a big factor. And I think that that's a great reason to choose the program. The other thing I want to touch on very quickly, you mentioned the international experience. So we do have a discovery expedition in term 3, which, as Susie mentioned, goes to emerging economies. And historically, we visit Vietnam and Brazil. So that's a week-long trip in term 3 that you can look forward to as an Ivey Executive MBA. And so with that, Karen, you're up.
Thank you for that. So I think I looked at it from 2 ways as to why I wanted to take an MBA. And so I share pretty openly with anyone who's willing to listen. So personally, it was really, I ended up splitting up with my partner. And so I really had to reassess, like, what direction do I want my life to go into? I want to make sure that I'm empowered from an educational standpoint so that I can feel like I can then go out and make like that economic earning power. I had always been driven. Like, I think that I always wanted like be a high performer, but that really kind of lit a fire under me to say, okay, like this is all in your hands now. And what do you want to do with it? So coming from it from that personal standpoint and then evaluating where my career was, I was always someone who kind of went where women weren't. My last position had been in construction and real estate and having one of the largest portfolios of the bank in Canada. And so I got really comfortable in a space where I maybe wasn't supposed to be comfortable. And then I gravitated towards like where can I be uncomfortable again, but in a different manner. And so I left what would have been, most likely like a sales role, like a sales relationship management role, and wanted to pivot into more strategic thinking. And so I saw the EMBA as really a way to, one, get the case study methods and learn about strategy and how we develop it, how you implement, but also that perspective that would bring. So you talked about the diversity of the class, and you see that in the panel today, all of the different industries. Every single person in our class approached problem solving differently. And I personally remember I had a medical doctor in my term 1 class, and the way he arrived at potentially the same solution I came at was drastically different. So I'm very linear, and I would take this line and he would go here, there, and everywhere, and we would arrive at the same point. But just understanding how people reach that point was, I guess, like something that has helped me in my current role. A reason I picked Ivey is, as we do, you kind of see like who has the best reputation, what are the schedules, right? And then you get more into the human aspect of it. And so talking to many different alumni, you would hear the passion for Ivey come through much more than I would when I had conversations from the other schools. And so there's always that intangible, right? So you've ticked off all of the things like, yes, okay, it's this program, the schedule works. And then there's like, well, what makes it really different? And for me, the passion of the alumni made it different. And when I look at our panel today, like I can confidently call all of these ladies my friends. We find ways to stay connected and help each other with personal, with work, so it's an amazing experience. And that to me, like, will stay with me for the rest of my life. So thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you. There's a real stickiness with the Ivey Alumni Network and the Ivey Alumni community, and it's you 5 are examples of it. And it's a massive. It has a massive ripple effect. Like I have yet to meet someone who's been through the program or is an Ivey alum who doesn't share that same enthusiasm, excitement, and energy about the school, the experience, and the community. So it's nice to hear that was a draw for you and that it's really lived up to its expectations. Jag, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Thank you. I always love following Karen in this because we had completely opposite life experiences, but ended up in the same place. So I actually got married, and a few months into my marriage, I came to this realization that my life and my goals and my path were now tethered to another person in a way that they had never been tethered before. And I looked back on my career and realized that a lot of my growth and a lot of the roles and the progress I had made had happened very organically. Of course, I had a plan, but things just kind of happened in a really beautiful way that helped me execute on that plan or take that plan in a different direction. I hadn't been 100% deliberate in every action that I had taken. And that actually really freaked me out because now my income, my growth, my career impact another person as well. And how could I not have thought about this before? And it was like an almost an existential crisis for me that you're Jag, you plan everything. How the hell did you not know this? So I sat down and mapped out, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And I realized I liked my role, I liked my industry, and I wanted to continue in this function. But I was overcome with anxiety because I realized there were so many little gaps along the way that I needed to fill. I also was a woman in my early 30s. And I was thinking in the next few years, I want us to buy a house in the city. We were living in downtown Toronto at the time. I want to have a kid, at least one. and I want to have like a balance in my lifestyle. So I really wanted to accelerate the filling of those gaps. And that's where I started exploring, is it time for me to go back to school and what should I learn? And then I set up some decision criteria, and they were around where can I go to school but I can still maintain my job? Because I didn't think where I was in my career and the trajectory I was on, I really felt like taking a step back would be a mistake. I also travel 40% of the time. So at the time I was working for a Silicon Valley firm. I now work for a France-based company. So I lead a region in the US, and I'm traveling back and forth to the US and Europe. So what will fit into my travel schedule? What will fit into my life schedule? Because now my MBA does impact my partner. He's been through the program as well, but he went through it full time, not at Ivey, elsewhere. So I know he'd relate to it, but now this impacts his life in some way. And also, the three letters are not going to change my career. My investment in the program are going to change my career. But what's a program that's going to continue to give me a return on my investment throughout my career? So the timing of the program was great for me, that I loved the 2 enrollment dates. I loved that it was once a month. I could plan out my schedule and then plan my work travel around that. And then when it came to, brand recognition was another one, because I'm working in a global market. I wanted a brand that would be recognized globally. And when it came to the global brand recognition, the return on my investment, I had an undergrad in biology, and I really was tired of hearing that somewhere in my body, there's a mitochondria and it's the powerhouse of the cell. Like, pardon my French, but I really didn't give a shit about something that I couldn't touch or see or experience. So I really appreciated learning about real life situations that I could understand, I could apply, and I could almost touch in a sense. I cared about the global brand. And when I thought about that return on my investment, I really thought about the alumni network. I thought about folks that I could tap on and say, hey, you're a fellow Ivey. I'd love to pick your brain. Since I graduated, I have a little life hack that I spend a lot of time in airports, and I always wear some sort of Ivey swag in the airline lounge. I cannot tell you how many times someone has come up to me and said, oh my God, what year did you graduate? Are you HBA or MBA? And I've built some incredible connections. I'm actually invited to a birthday party this weekend for the child of a fellow Ivey alum who we were at a wedding together in Mexico last fall. And he saw my t-shirt and walked up to my husband and said, did your wife go to Ivey? Like, what year? And now they've become great friends. So, that's the kind of return on my investment I was looking for. It fit my schedule. It's helped me fill my gaps. I got promoted during the program, but it also kind of fit into my life as well. And I still have those scary, anxious moments, but I feel like I'm able to strategize around my career a little bit better.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I hope the birthday party is a lot of fun. I'm curious, many of you touched on schedule, and you talked about, we know that work's very busy, different junctures in your personal lives. Finding the time is, I think, one of the big scary barriers that frightens people when embarking on the journey. And I'm curious to hear how you made it work. So how did you manage the robust curriculum, because you're not only in class one weekend a month, there's a lot of demands on your time. The weeks that you're not in physical session, there's a lot of prep work. There's a lot of homework that you're doing, meeting with your learning teams, in addition to your very busy jobs and your very busy personal lives. So I'm curious, how did you make it work? I'll maybe open the floor. And Anna, you're unmuted, so I'm going to ask you to start. Actually, I won't open the floor. Anna, why don't you start and maybe share, how did you make it work? An SVP, mom of young children, life is very busy, and then you added a commitment that's 25 hours a week to your schedule, and you did it. So what's the secret?
Throw a pandemic in the middle of it.
What's a global pandemic, right?
I'll say it in a very simple way. It's organization. It's military precision around your schedule. If I could leave you all with kind of that kind of tip, I think it has to be that. Actually, the weeks that you're not in class are more important than the weeks that you actually are in class. And kind of just ensuring that whether that's morning or evenings, whatever it works for you is done. What this experience did for me is it actually allowed me to realize and be more aware of how I was filling my discretionary time. And for me, I was filling that discretionary time with work. And it's amazing, Station and I exchanged notes one day, a couple months ago. It's amazing what happens when you create boundaries. And to be honest, I didn't have those boundaries before, even though I had two small school-age children and a family or whatnot. The line between work and life has always been blurred for me. And so creating those boundaries, being clear on what your non-negotiables are, whether that is at work or at home, with your relationship, with your children, or with your friends. And just like, it's not more complicated than that. Know what those are, schedule those, schedule around it, and leave. I mean, I always give this saying to everybody at work, leave loudly. If you're going to watch your children play soccer, leave loudly. Don't hide it. Don't shirk through the back door. People need to see that this is important, that you're role modeling it. And so I use that same analogy and say, learn loudly, because you'll be incredibly surprised how much support you will get at home, from your extended family, from your friends, and from your colleagues. So I'll leave you guys with that. Military precision around scheduling, the power of boundaries, and realizing what fills your discretionary time, and making sure that what's filling it is important to you. And when you make the decision to do something like that, like this, right? You make sure that that's what's filling your discretionary time, and learn loudly, because you will get support. And for someone people who are not used to, usually type A personalities pursuing this stuff, aren't used to asking for help. It's a learning experience in itself as a person. So I'll leave you with that.
I actually want to build on that. I agree with all of that, especially around boundaries. So on top of COVID and career, we made a move from Toronto to Ottawa and then back during the program. We had thought we'd be in Ottawa longer, life circumstances changed, and we had to come back. So I was dealing with a lot of life change type of things and not really feeling grounded or rooted anywhere. And I'm sure the class laughs about this behind my back, but I had 3 emotional experiences where I burst into tears in front of the class while contributing. Like, that's how much stress I was under. And to Anna's point, being loud about your needs, being transparent with your support network, asking for help is so important. I actually distinctly remember a day where my husband asked me to do something, and I turned around and just lost it and said, I think I am terrible right now. Like, I think I'm the worst student. I'm the worst employee. I'm the worst daughter. My mother was a frontline worker in the pandemic. My mother's widowed. She's living alone. I'm half a province away from her. I'm a bad wife. I think I suck. And this is like the worst I've ever felt in my life. And I realized that it was the first time I had actually shared with him how I was feeling. And immediately his response was, holy crap, I did not know this. What do you need from me? And I felt like my role as his partner was to be supportive as part of his move and to pick up my life, but I hadn't shared everything that I was feeling on top of the program. And I think as the 5 of us, and I hope a few others speak up, but as the 5 of us were chatting about this in advance of today, we all had an experience of where we all felt like we couldn't ask for help. I grew up in a single parent household where I was expected to just figure things out, and I was the oldest. I had to just figure things out. And I realized that while that builds resilience, that doesn't always set you up for success. So putting up your hand and saying, I need help with this. There is no way I would have gotten A in finance without putting my hand up. So remember that your support system is there for you, but they can only help you if you make your needs heard. And, my emotional breakdowns were exhausting, and they didn't help achieve anything. So if you can learn from me, please do.
I'll follow up with that. And being in Jake's class, really her bringing her authentic self to class and sharing those emotions really helped a lot of people in the class be honest about how they were feeling. And so I was nursing. I was breastfeeding the entire time I was in the program. So during breaks, that meant that I had to haul my little human and my mother to class out of town every month. And during breaks, instead of having chats and networking with my class, I was either pumping or breastfeeding a baby. I reached points in the program where at the beginning, where I didn't want my team to make concessions for me as a new mom, as a woman. I wanted to either hold my own or just suffer in silence. And I reached a point and was really inspired by Jag. Reached a point where I couldn't, and I asked for help. And everybody, they bring their experiences, but most of the men and women, they get it, and they are 100% supportive. So do not suffer in silence. And the whole managing your time thing, I'm with Anna. For me, you make a schedule, and it is your holy grail. You do not deviate from it. For me, I cut out people who brought drama and bullshit. Pardon my French. We're all speaking French today. And just manage my expectations around commitments. Things change. You reprioritize your schedule, your life, and stick to it. It's a 50-month program. On the other side, life resumes. But until then, you focus, and it's doable.
Maybe Susie, I'll jump in there because I think that the three of you just shared like phenomenal life stories as to how you were like extremely challenged with time. Like mine, I think is a little bit different. Like I'm single, I don't have children. And so it's really managing my day to day. But I live in a city by myself with no family. And I have a great network of friends, which like you're all a part of, but it's different situation, right? And so for me, like the learning was like completely different than what you all have been managing. It was really learning to be kinder to myself and getting rid of that need to be perfect and being that yes person, right? Like, so we all know this, you're high achievers at work. Something comes up, last minute project, single woman, no kids. Hey, Karen, do you have capacity to do this? Yes, all the way through, right? And so it got to the point with like Anna saying boundaries. It's like, where is that in the priorities? If you want me to take that on, like what can I deprioritize, right? Not reading something through 500 times to proofread it to make sure it's perfect. Like, that saying done is better than perfect, that started to resonate with me, which was huge for me, right? And so, and even in casework, I remember term one, they would always tell us, don't spend longer than 2 hours on a case. If you haven't gotten to it by then, wait till your group meeting, kind of talk about it there. I am the type of person that would like just go down a rabbit hole on every case because I just wanted to learn. So it would be like 5 hours a case and just, Googling other things that had nothing to do with what I was supposed to do. So it got me to really focus time and say, what's a need to know and what's like a nice to know, right? And what do I really need to do? And you start applying that to all aspects of your life. So you go back to work and you're like, I'm not going to take 2 hours to make this decision. Like, what does the data tell me? What are those kind of like unintended consequences? And let's make a choice. Let's pick a path forward. Let's keep going. So you learn to be more, I think, effective and efficient with your time. And it's amazing how much hidden capacity you can find. I will kind of share that I never had Netflix. I didn't have like Spotify. I didn't have all of these things until after the MBA. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I need to cancel these subscriptions because like just time sucks, right? And so you do eliminate a lot of that throughout the program, and you're amazed by how much time you really do have.
Okay, so I think everybody has kind of shared really, great points. Again, learning how to delegate, setting up those boundaries. One of the things that I think for me, being in the position that I was as the executive director of this charity, and a couple of us in the program actually set up a smaller group, and these were people who were CEOs of companies, so the leaders of companies. And what I found really good for me that was I was able to use some of our school projects into my work. So that was one of my sort of life hacks of that program, is being able to even look at some things that I have put on the back burner, but utilize those to be able to do my school project. So I remember in one of our classes, which was our strategic planning analysis sort of course. And we, at that point in time, my organization was going through a strategic plan. And so utilizing what I was already learning into my work helped to make work a little bit easier for me. But one of the things too as well is that within the program, again, things that I may have spent a long time, similar to what Karen sort of mentioned, is that I was able to make decisions much quicker. I was able to look at data and, make decisions on these, where as before, I might be going through a whole longer process. And I think that even when I go back to think about the first sort of question about why I did my MBA, I mentioned in my application is that I know that I've made smart decisions, right? Before as a leader, but then wanting to have some tools to make quicker decisions, right? When you look at being in the not-for-profit sector, and you are given money from a donor, you want to be as efficient as possible in the use of those dollars, right? And so just being more capable to make those decisions at work. And I again, what I would say is, being very vocal about your needs and your boundaries with people. I've lost friends, during the program who, expected a certain amount of, again, my time, but I unfortunately couldn't provide it for them. And also for me, I suffer with a disease called fibromyalgia, which drains my energy. So again, for me, it was even more specific of how I was spending my energy and just being very vocal. And the relationships that lasted became stronger and better. And I've even made other connections again with all these women here on this panel and some other colleagues. So, there's always a trade-off, but then you get something beautiful out of this program when you're able to set up those boundaries and delegate and all those things that the other panelists have mentioned.
Thank you. Thanks to each of you for sharing your experience in terms of how you made it work. Sachin, when we spoke last time and on the similar topic, you said something that really stuck with me, and I've actually shared it in a number of conversations recently with people considering the program. And you said you didn't know how you were going to make it work time-wise, but you learned very quickly that when it matters and when it's important to you, the universe makes space. And when you said that, I thought, what a beautiful way to explain how it all comes together. And I think through all the different scenarios and strategies that each of you just shared, I think that kind of umbrella over everything really helps people envision how you make it work. When it's important to you, you'll find the time and the universe will make space. So thank you. I guess next, as we're kind of rounding the corner in this panel, I'm hoping you can each touch on either your proudest accomplishment or your biggest takeaway from the program, or both. Maybe they're intertwined. Maybe you have responses to both that pop up. But your proudest accomplishment, either directly within the program or as a result of the program, and your biggest takeaway. I'm really curious to hear your perspectives. And Karen, if you don't mind, I might start with you, because I know when we had chatted previously, I know that you were the driver of or part of a team that drove some great change in the program, and maybe that's something you'd like to touch on.
Sure. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, no, I would say that was definitely a group effort. That is one of my biggest, the proudest moments within Ivey, and I think something that the future cohort, so, our participants today can look forward to. So our cohort was very passionate about diversity and inclusion. And so we saw opportunities to really take into account what was happening in the climate when we were in the course. And so I think of George Floyd that happened almost 2 years ago, I think, to today, right? And so you think about how the world is changing and the importance of ESG, and just seeing, wanting some of that to be incorporated into the program. So as everything, things start with baby steps, and we started with some lunch and learns, and Station played a really big part in getting some guest speakers to come and join the class. And then I think as our faculty, Ivey's faculty, saw the impact of that, taking care of people first so that they can then further invest themselves and then go back into their organizations and make a bigger impact. It seemed that, the importance of this was recognized by Ivey. So it actually led to a change in the curriculum. So there's 2 different classes now that are as a result of that. And so that's like the responsible governance and the power in politics courses. So once people start to move through those classes, I would be thrilled to hear what their feedback is and what the impact on their learning was. So that, I think that was probably like the proudest moment as a legacy of our cohort. You have personal things too, right? Like I think a lot of us went on and got into like new roles, so promotions, which we all, when we think about ROI, like you're looking for career development. So that almost at the end of the program and the end of experience takes a back seat to things. So I think, yeah, again, we can check that box, like we kind of accomplished that and it'll keep feeding us. But for me, it always comes back to the people. And I think like Jag's point that Jag and I met in our dry run for this session. And then we went to Global Ivey Day together. We've established such a great rapport in like 2-3 weeks time that it is, you all go through this insanely intense experience that you create these strong, like lasting bonds. And that I think will be what stays with me for a lifetime.
Thank you. Susie, do you have any takeaways or accomplishments that come to mind when thinking about your experience in the program or your experience since the program?
Yeah, Kim, graduating from Ivey, it changed me significantly in a lot of ways. For one, I finally found my voice, and I am an avid communicator, content creator, and now influencer for the nuclear industry, not just in Canada, but globally. But it allowed me to transition, like to continue to travel my career journey and move out of a technical role and into a business development role, which is exactly where I envisioned my career path leading towards. But just to echo everything Karen and Jag have been saying, the relationships will continue to pay dividends. Like, I am honored to be connected with Station, who, even though we're not in the same cohorts, I feel like I've known Station my whole life. I support her organization and I'm inspired with her leadership in her community and just all the work she's doing in the nonprofit space. I have been the reference for 4 people so far in pursuing other roles for my organization and others, and I'm so happy to do that. So when I think about the network that I've built and the network that continues to grow through Ivey, I mean that to me is the most rewarding part about being a graduate.
Thank you. And Jag, I saw you had unmuted earlier, so sorry I skipped you, but we're back. So
yeah, that's okay. I would say that to my earlier point, I think one of my biggest takeaways is that authenticity is really appreciated and a huge strength. And I think vulnerability can be a huge strength. And that's one big takeaway I took away from the program, because I grew up in a culture and have worked in industries that have been much more legacy based and all about this executive presence that has to come off as like diamond hard, right? And you can't have feelings, you can't have emotions, especially as a woman. You have to be sharp. Working in tech, especially, like I see this paradigm shift between women who have a lot more experience and are much more senior and feel like they have to roll with the boys or play like the boys and be really hard. But what I really learned and appreciated through this program was like me being me and showing my emotions and like putting my cards on the table in many situations actually made me much more disarming. And I had so many more people come to me and say, holy crap, I feel the exact same way. Like I had a classmate who came to me and shared that they were diagnosed with clinical depression, and that class was a big trigger for them. And we were able to build almost like a symbiotic support relationship where they would send me a little note saying, I'm having a really bad day. Can we find like 10 minutes aside? And I would say, yes, absolutely. And that went completely against everything that I had been taught culturally, professionally. And I think I found a way throughout the program to channel that in a way where I wasn't always like Susie, I think can tell you my stress cries reduced by term 3, right? But channeling it in a way where you can be your authentic self and you can be vulnerable, but you can use it as a strength to build relationships, to be much more transparent about maybe certain flaws in certain projects or certain concerns that you have, and channel it in a way that's much more productive and less erratic and emotional. So that's not something I thought I would learn from the program at all. I thought I was going to come out and know, how to build a discounted cash flow analysis. And I'll be honest, a lot of the direct content that we learned, I don't even remember. I think it was just such a busy and stressful time. I was just blowing through it, but I know that I can go back to it. But learning something like this is completely intangible and not something I thought I would walk away with.
So I'll jump in. I think there's a number of places for me in terms of my proudest moments, but I would say just even getting my acceptance letter was one of my proudest moments. I was at that time at Sunnybrook. My only family member in Canada was diagnosed with cancer, and I was in Sunnybrook at that point in time. And I looked down at my phone and I saw this acceptance letter. And I also saw at that point in time that I was awarded for the first time in Ivey was giving a not-for-profit scholarship. And so I broke down in tears in the hospital. And I would say in terms of kind of piggybacking on what Karen talked about. So everything that I do in my life centers around my Black community. And I should have even mentioned that in my first thing about why doing the MBA. But I'm seen as a community leader. And, when you look at the business space, Black people are not represented in the business industry, far more for a Black woman. And I was one out of the 54 people, one Black woman out of 54 people in that cohort. And so I felt as well, I was given the opportunity in terms of, getting this scholarship, and also wanted to ensure that there was a part for my community thereafter. So amongst all the other things in terms of the curriculum change, one of the things that, again, a proud moment is we were able to work with the fundraising and scholarship department to create the first Black EMBA scholarships. Myself and another individual from the class behind, the cohort that was coming after, so Amoy Henry. And so, just leaving that legacy that there's an opportunity for another Black person to come into the program was something that, I would always remember.
Thank you, Stashin, and thank you for your important work. And that scholarship is, like you said, you've left a legacy. There are actually now 5 Black Learner Scholarships awarded at the time of admission to candidates joining the program now. So thank you for your important work. And I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So for me, proudest moments are very much kind of personal. I'm kind of with Jay. If somebody stopped me right now and asked me what we learned in kind of economics, I could probably pass the first 30 seconds, but if you poke me a couple more times, I wouldn't be able to recite it for you. But that's really not the point of the program. And I think, knowing kind of what kind of drives you, I think is critically important. For me, there's tons of personal growth. I am a far more patient person than I was when I came into the program. I have never embraced the journey or the process. And you'll know this if you've been to a session yet, or you will go to a session if you are enrolled soon, that you'll hear the coined phrase, trust the process. And you're going to say to yourself, I trust nothing, that this thing feels absolutely daunting and I'm signing, I'm looking for every reason to rip up my acceptance letter right now and not do this. And you have every faculty member saying to you, just trust the process. And I probably wasn't until term 2, at some point in term 2, where I actually started to trust the process and know that as daunting and as intense as it felt, and it feels like it's going to take forever at the beginning. It doesn't feel like 15 months. It feels like the rest of your life. And you can't see the end. The end is there. Every week will pass. Every month will pass. You'll take the exam. You'll submit your assignment. And you'll finish the term. And you'll start it all over again. You'll do it again. And you'll go through the same different pieces. Time passes. You will march your way through it. Right? So I think that is the first piece. And as a type A personality who just really couldn't become that vulnerable person and just let themselves through a process, that was an incredible amount of learning. I mean, to Karen's point, the other learning I think for me was it doesn't have to be perfect. And that for me is not just a personal piece, but so incredibly important as a leader. To know that that level of expectation that you place on yourself, you in turn place on your team. And to know that when you could release that expectation of yourself in your peers, that will translate into how you lead a function and lead a business and lead a group, right? So that is just those immeasurable kind of pieces, right? And they tell you you're going to make lots of friends. And if you're like me, you sat there and you said, I don't get enough time for my own friends. I don't need more. And the reality is you're going to make them whether you like them or not. Whether you like it or not, they're going to be your friends. And a handful of them are going to follow you for the rest of your life. And it will happen. It happens every term. It happens every cohort. I don't know how it happens, but there is something that kind of binds you. And you will find a handful of, in our case, women and men who we came together and really kind of formed some deep relationships. And it happens. And you're going to embrace it and you're going to bring it with you. And I'll close with, if I step back and I say, what was my most proudest moment? I got a phone call in term 3 from my daughter's teacher. And she was in the first grade at that point. And she said, I didn't realize, talking about something, I didn't realize that you were a professor. I said, no, I'm not a professor. What are you talking about? So I thought my daughter was just a chronic liar at school. But what was happening was she was telling everybody that her mommy was at school. Her mommy was at Western and Ivey. And for those of you who are thinking about a family or who have a family or who are thinking about what comes tomorrow, I cannot impress upon you how incredibly heartwarming it is to see the impact that you have on your next generation. So I'll leave that with each of you guys.
You're pulling on my mom heartstrings right here, Anna, but thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I think, everyone does join the program from such different junctures and at different experiences and spaces in their life. But I have heard from you just now and other moms and dads alike in the past that kind of demonstrating to your children that the importance of lifelong learning and that investment in yourself, betting on yourself, it's worth its weight in gold. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. We are in the final moments. I'm hoping what we can maybe do, have a very rapid fire, biggest piece of advice, one line, putting you on the spot a bit, but one piece of advice for women considering the program. Take it away.
I really wanted to get this in here, so I'm glad we had a few extra minutes because something we haven't touched upon is some of the financial decisions that you have to make. And as women, when we look at the landscape, you start to think about, you've heard it here, buying a house, getting married, having kids, right? Just at the stages of your life. So I encourage everyone to really look into what your employer offers. So I was fortunate enough to have a major educational sponsorship. I know Anna can talk about that on ongoing because she's more experienced with it, but a lot of employers offer some sort of educational or personal career development benefits. So if that is a reason why you maybe have been putting off the decision, really look into that and have your sponsors and mentors advocate on your behalf.
And I'll just add there related to the finance piece that I opened the session introducing what we're talking about, but I didn't mention that my job is to help you. So I have resources available that can help guide the conversation about sponsorship with your employee or employer rather. And also there are a number of ways that people do finance their executive MBA that I'd be very pleased to discuss with you further. So never hesitate to reach out to the admissions and recruitment team, because we may have tools that you can put in your toolbox to help fund this journey, which will change your life. So who wants to go next?
Sorry, who's?
You're next, Dashin.
Okay, awesome. Someone said something to me and it resonated, and I'll share that. So focus on self. So S for sleep, make sure you get sleep. Exercise, even if it means that you would take a walk. And I remember during COVID, we will come off of our Zoom and I would actually go walk around my block. So, just even it's finding some time, because you would have heard about the COVID-19 pounds, but there's the Ember 15. So you put on 15 pounds in terms of being at Ivey, because there's a lot of food. And so that's one part of the self, which is food. So make sure you're choosing the right foods when you go by at Ivey, because there's always cookies after in the break. So you want to be mindful of the food and your lifestyle. And I mean that in lifestyle in terms of who you're having around you. People say cut out people with, the BS, the drama, whatnot. Make sure that you have a solid lifestyle. So those parts of self, sleep, exercise, lifestyle, and food is what you want to make sure that you focus on when you take this journey.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I would just say to you, if you're thinking about it, take the leap of faith. You will not look back. You will not regret it. Just go in and you will be a different person in some way, shape, or form when you're done it. So if you're thinking about it, go for it.
And that was exactly what I was going to say, Anna. Just if you're thinking about it, just do it. The time goes by so quick, it makes your head spin. Time is our most precious resource. Don't wait. Just do it.
Trust the process. You're going to hear it a million times throughout the program, and it's going to annoy you. But another few words that I remembered were on a phone call to my grandparents. I was missing home. I hadn't seen them in months because of COVID. And I said to my grandfather, I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I decided to make this decision during this tough time of my life. And he said, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would have one. Everybody would have an MBA. So when you're going through this tough experience and you're wondering, why the hell did I get into this? What was I thinking? Remember, it's an investment in yourself. You're differentiating yourself. And if it was easy, everyone would have one. And the one last thing I'll say is, even if you're not part of the program yet, please reach out to the Alumni Network. Reach out to any one of us. If anyone said something today that resonates with you and you're thinking, oh my God, I can relate, or I want to learn more, I will never say no to a conversation with anyone ever, actually, that wants to learn anything. But especially when a fellow Ivey reaches out, I always answer the phone. I always respond to the message. I think everyone here does the same, and pretty much everyone I know in the program will do the same. So please don't hesitate.
And thank you so much. And I'm happy to help facilitate those introductions. So please lean into the admissions and recruitment team at Ivey. We are here to help you and help determine if this is the right fit. And like I said, provide some tools to put in your toolbox to ensure that it's a really exciting and life-changing journey. I want to thank our fantastic panelists. Thanks to each of you for sharing your time, your experiences, your insights and advice. I love connecting with each of you, hearing about your experiences, and I know that what you've shared has undoubtedly brought tremendous value to individuals who are considering the Ivey Executive MBA. So without further ado, we'll sign off. But again, I strongly encourage you to stay in touch with Ivey. If you're looking to reach out to the panelists, feel free to connect with me and I can facilitate an introduction, or you can find everyone, of course, on LinkedIn. And I hope everyone has a terrific day. So thank you again, and I hope we'll be in touch soon. Bye.